As a leader, you're creating a culture that sends a message that it's okay to have questions because you're acknowledging that not everyone knows everything about everything. Because in some environments where people don't feel safe or comfortable admitting that they don't know everything, they just pretend that they do.
I don't think there's any such thing as a dumb question. Like I said the other day on a call here, talk to me as if I'm a small child or a golden retriever. I don't think there's anything wrong with people in those positions being honest, like, please don't give me the gobbledygook.
Well, when you join our team, ask a ton of questions because you are going to notice things that those of us who've been immersed and embedded in it for so long aren't even seeing anymore. So ask those questions because it gets everyone thinking. Hey everyone, welcome back to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. We're excited to have another conversation with you today. This one's going to be an interesting one. Patrick, what do you have for us today?
Good morning, everybody. Hello from Texas. In my journeys, somewhere along the way, I found this list of things that says how to win in corporate life. I sent it to Rachel and I said, wow, why didn't we think of all these things? And we should talk about it on one of our pods. So we're going to talk about them today. And we'll make sure they're in the comments or wherever the producers put this stuff for you guys. But there's 10 of them. I'm going to read all 10 to start, and then we're just going to jump in on a few. And we'd love your feedback on how you guys are winning at corporate life. So number one is, and this is my favorite. Rachel and I were just talking how I kind of run on at the mouth sometimes, or I said that. She would never say that, but I said it. So number one is speak less in meetings. Number two is deliver before deadlines. And I like to say undercommit and overdeliver. Document every task. I had a guy from Citibank say once, his name is Brian Persciota. If you're listening to this, Brian, hello. He lives in southern New Jersey down by Avalon. He would say, what's said is in the air. What's written is always there. Learn stakeholder management. Stay away from gossip. Number 6 is build internal reputation or political capital. 7, ask smart questions. 8, be solution oriented. The outcome is all that matters. I say that here all the time. I'm like, stop talking to me about the plan and deliver it. Like outcome. Number 9 is master emotional control, a lifelong pursuit for me. And 10, keep learning outside job role. Do you want to pick a couple, Rachel, and give us your opinion?
Oh my gosh, they're all so good. And what's so interesting is so many of these seem like, yeah, of course, right? They seem so simple, but sometimes it's the most simple things that we forget about, right? So many of us think we're above and beyond, right? We're so sophisticated. We operate in these large, complex environments, and we forget about the basics. And some of these are really important. So I have the list in front of me because I don't remember all of them.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's start with the first one. Speak less in meetings. You know, there are apps now, especially with AI, and even before AI, there was this like conferencecall.com type of tool that would actually track how many minutes each person spent speaking on a conference call, on an old school conference call, those bridges that we used to dial into. And it was so fascinating because they were able to recognize you based on your PIN number. And you can look at the analytics afterwards and see how much of the airtime any one person might have been monopolizing. And I think that's always interesting. Is it the person that's running the meeting? Is it the person that should have the most to contribute? Or is it someone that's just yapping away to sound smart?
So this is an app in the background, you're saying?
It was. I am sure they have way more sophisticated ones with these
Oh,
AI
yeah, sure they do
note
now, yeah.
readers and things like that. But even back in the day, there was something like that. And they
Wow.
were also able to measure like how much pause time was there. And they got really granular where you can see a gender difference in who speaks over people, who's an interrupter. And it's just fascinating to monitor those conversation styles. But sometimes the people that speak less are the ones that are actually taking time to listen and soak it all in. They're not immediately crafting what they're going to say next when they're listening to the other person speak, which is something a lot of us do. And then they catch the things that are important.
Yeah, I just counseled somebody, and counsel isn't a bad word, everybody. Just dialogue. I'll use the word dialogue. I dialogued with somebody a couple weeks ago about just speak less. There's power in silence. You don't have to have your face in the frame all the time to add value. Because most of the time
Yeah.
you're shoving your face in the frame, you're actually not adding value. You're just sucking up minutes that people don't have. Now, there's an interesting intersection of not being heard and being overheard. That's a balance, and I don't think anyone's really good at it. I had a boss 100 years ago say to me, Patrick, you don't talk enough in meetings. I said, I would add no value. There's nothing going on in the meetings you're referring to that require me to speak. She didn't know what to say. And I was younger. I was probably 35, 36. But I just thought the meetings I was sitting in that she was referring to were just dumb. And look, I told you how much I loved US Bank, but the bank was amazing at having meetings, to have meetings, to
Yeah.
get meetings. Like there were so many meetings where a lot of those places, the meetings become the job.
Yes.
The meetings
It's the
become
meeting
the
before
job.
the meeting and the meeting after the meeting and the meeting to talk about the meeting. Yeah.
Or the famous, hey, let's take that offline. Now, sometimes that happens because it's confrontational or
Yeah.
there's something unnerving happening in public and people don't want to deal with it in front of the masses. So they were like, let's just take this offline. Well, that's another meeting. Like it's like there's so many of those. I'm not complaining about it. It's super interesting. And the person I was discussing this with, I'm like, your presence is valuable. Like I think people forget how important presence is. If you want to call it your aura, or hey, how about your work is your voice? What you accomplish is your voice. So if you're sitting in endless meetings, your work is the output. It's not how many words you spit out in a machine gun in a meeting. And you don't have to try to be the smartest one in the room. I think most people are naturally smart in places like we've worked and where we work, because you wouldn't have those jobs if you weren't already smart. For the most part, I know there's hiring misfires, and if you're first time listening to this podcast, Rachel's like the queen of talent management. She spent a career finding smart people to do amazing things. So I'm not saying anything she doesn't already know. But for the audience, like if you have these jobs, somebody thought you were pretty smart. Maybe a few leaked through, or they're bullshit artists and they've made a career of bootlicking and they end up in these places and these jobs by that. But for the most part, I would say 70 to 80% of the people in these meetings are naturally smart. Just cut them loose to do their work.
Yeah. So stop having so many meetings, but also if you're someone who tends to take over during meetings and always feel that you have something to contribute, or maybe you find silence awkward, stop,
Yeah.
pause, see what happens next. It could be really interesting. A couple of other pieces of nuggets of advice, because we always love practical takeaways in our podcast. If you're somebody who talks too much, try to talk less. If you're somebody who doesn't speak enough and you find it a little bit awkward to contribute and you're not really sure how to insert yourself in a conversation, which can sometimes be uncomfortable, especially on Zoom, figure out a different way to either let the moderator of the meeting know, hey, I'd like to say something. You can send someone a text on chat. You can raise your hand with that little silly icon, or just, chime in, go out of your comfort zone and speak up if you find that you don't always do that. But I think the most important role that somebody plays in the meeting is whoever's in charge of the meeting, right? Your job is not just to send out the meeting invite and get everyone in and chase people for follow-ups. Your job is, as a leader, especially if it's your team, is to listen and monitor who's taking up all the airtime. Is there somebody who really has an idea to contribute but can't get a word in edgewise? Maybe pause and say, hey, okay, let's give Jane a chance to speak. We haven't heard from her. Or if you notice someone, this is really interesting. Do you ever notice when you're on a Zoom or a Teams with someone, when somebody keeps clicking the mute button on and off,
Yes.
sometimes that means that they're trying to say something, but they
I
just don't
Well,
know
you see
how
me
to.
on calls. I'm watching people's body language
Yes.
and their mute buttons. I'm like, hey,
Yes.
look, Satish, hey, what did
Right?
that mean? Like, I love pulling people out.
But it's the mute button that sometimes, like, they may not feel comfortable raising their hand, or maybe they're like, should I say something? Should I not? So as the person in charge of the meeting, you want the right voices to be heard. Otherwise, it's just the same people that like to hear the sound of their own voice. Okay. Which next one should we tackle? You choose the next one.
Ask smart questions. It's kind of
Ooh.
tied to number one, speak less in meetings, but number seven is ask smart questions. Were you on the staff call where I talked about Lander and the crickets?
Yes.
Or whatever call that was? It was a big staff call. It was the all staff.
Yes.
I ask people questions in meetings because I actually want insight. I mean, Rachel will tell you, like I say to her all the time, about what would you do? Or what do you think about this? Like, I'm not doing that to check a box. I genuinely am interested in what smart people have to say, because I'm famous for saying I'm not the smartest one in the room. I've never been the smartest one in the room. And the old adage of if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. I took that to heart at a very young age. I'm since 18, surrounded by what people that I would consider more courageous, wiser, brighter. Is intimidating sometimes to ask questions because I think we grow up like if you ask a dumb question, you feel dumb. But I also believe the adage of I don't think there's any such thing as a dumb question. Like I said the other day on a call here, I love the movie Margin Call with Jeremy Irons in it. And I sent a video to everybody. Some people watched it, some people didn't. But he actually says in there, it said, talk to me as if I'm a small child or a golden retriever. I don't think there's anything wrong with people in those positions being honest. Like, please don't give me the gobbledygook. Just say it as simple as you can. So I don't know if ask smart questions is as important as ask questions. Like, I wouldn't wander through your career not being curious about what's happening or to want to understand at a level that a Labrador retriever would understand it. And I'm okay telling people I'm your friendly Labrador retriever. Just speak to me as if I'm a small child because I think anyone can make something complicated. Any idiot could make something really hard. Smart people make hard things really simple. So I don't know so much if it's ask smart questions, it's be curious to ask questions. If you don't understand something, even if it's in a room full of people, you're not there to be emotionally okay with feeling okay. You're in your job to add value. And if adding value is getting smarter about something you don't understand, we just got done talking about talking in meetings or over talking or too many meetings or whatever. I'm not saying take things offline and create another meeting. If you're in a meeting with a bunch of smart people and you need to understand something, sometimes a smart question is to ask one that maybe you think is dumb. It's probably not. Find
For
ways to
sure.
pull the thread.
Yeah, and as a leader, you're creating a culture that sends a message that it's okay to have questions because you're acknowledging that not everyone knows everything about everything. Because in some environments where people don't feel safe or comfortable admitting that they don't know everything, they just pretend that they do. And it's very obvious because then they start using all kinds of fancy words and
Well, that's
using word
dangerous
salad.
too. It's dangerous.
And it's also a little toxic. So I think acknowledging, hey, I'm the big boss here and I don't know everything, it sends a message to everyone else that they can also do that. I like to do that with new people that join the company because new people, and in different environments, the newness stage lasts for different lengths of time. But around here, I tell people when you join our team, ask a ton of questions because you are going to notice things that those of us who've been immersed and embedded in it for so long aren't even seeing anymore. So ask those questions because it gets everyone thinking. Now, it's okay to ask it in a friendly way and not in a challenging way. There's an art to asking questions, but totally agree with you. I think that's so, so important.
Back to
Okay, I'm
margin
going to,
call. Back to
yeah,
margin call real quick. Rachel's really trying to keep us on track here today, but I'm going to ruin it. So I
okay.
read over the weekend that Margin Call's budget. You ready for this? And it was not far from 140 Broadway where they filmed it. It was like the
Oh,
next building over. If you notice the view when Jeremy Irons is at the window, it looks just like our view
mm,
out of 140. Anyway, $3.5 million. That's all.
that's all.
And think about the actors and actresses that were in that thing. These were all high dollar people, and they all loved the script so much they basically did it for free.
Hmm,
How often do you hear that? Everybody watch Margin Call. It talks about the housing crisis, and it's a dark picture of corporate America, but it is what it is. Can we
it
grab
is.
solution oriented?
Yes, go for
Number
it.
8 was be solution oriented. I'm going to speak and then I'm going to stop and let Rachel finish this one off. The journey to complete something isn't as important as completing it. And I know there's a bunch of t-shirts out there. It's not the destination, it's the journey. All right. If you're on a Harley trip or you're going to the Grand Canyon in the family truckster with your brood of children and your husband or your wife or your partner or whatever, fine, I get it. The journey is more important than the destination. But at work, eh, you, we're all here to achieve goals. Be goal oriented. Don't make work out of work. where you never accomplish anything. That's a horrible way. That's a horrible way to go through life as a person, much less a steward of a business. Everybody, from the guy unlocking the door and making sure the lights are on to the CEO or the chairman of the board or all the big shot positions, only mission should be accomplishing what you set out to do. It shouldn't be wandering through the dark forest, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. Sometimes you're not going to sing Kumbaya. It's hard. It's hard to finish something you start in corporate America. Or if you have a special project and you're a law enforcement officer, or not-for-profit fundraising, or look what happened over the weekend with rescuing that downed Wizzo. I mean, the guy was this is going to be the best book ever written. And I hope that somebody in the logistics and planning part of all of that writes a book on teamwork.
Mm.
Now, in the military, there are a million plans for everything, things you guys wouldn't believe. Like, it's been a long time since I've been in, but some of the stuff I was exposed to 100 years ago freaked me out because you plan for everything and hope you never have to use it. So these rescue missions are all planned, but they have to be tailored to the situation on the ground. There's no way to plan for that, but they had plans, if that makes sense. And then all these people had to come together inside 48 hours, including POTUS, all the way down to the crew chief in the back of a helicopter flying into Iran, and everyone in between to pull one guy out of a crevice on a 7,000-foot peak. And then you lose 3 aircraft in the process that you have to destroy yourself, blah, 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 blah. The goal wasn't to make it a never-ending mission. The goal was to get the guy out and come home. Now, that's a really interesting way to bridge corporate America, but it's all the same. Maybe you're not trying to save someone hanging off the side of a cliff, but you're paid dollars to accomplish a mission. It could be adding debit cards to a bank. It could be adding vehicles to a law enforcement agency. It's a project. You got to contact the dealer. You got to make sure it's got the right horsepower. Does it have the right equipment in it? All the stuff a cop needs to be successful in its job every day. Anything that you do for a living, be super clear on what the goal is, what the end state is, and then finish it. Don't wander.
So I have so much to say about that. And I know we have limited time.
No, don't do that, Rachel. Say it.
Okay.
And then we'll finish.
So what I'm going to say is we have a unique luxury to be able to approach our work like that here at the company that we work for now. And it's because of the type of company we are, the stage in our growth, the nuances of our industry, and also the characteristics of our leadership and shareholders and board members and us. Yeah, absolutely. But what I'll say is I think that is one of the biggest differences between corporate America and like big corporate and smaller, more nimble companies and startups, right? In big corporate, there's so much about the pomp and circumstance of the work that we do. And there's the PowerPoints and the socializing and the strategies and the approvals and the stakeholdering, and it's never ending. And people who are immersed in that for years and for decades and entire careers, they become wrapped up into all of that formality and process. And that becomes their badge of honor. That's their pride. And that translates to the way their leadership perceives it and the way their board and their shareholders perceive it. It's like, what is your strategy? What is your program? What is your plan? What is it that you do? What is your offering? And in smaller companies, it's more scrappy. It's like, well, who cares about that stuff? Like, did you actually do it? And it's refreshing, right? I love it. But it took me a little bit to shift gears when I shifted from being a big company person to a smaller company person.
Well, I remember you telling me that. You went from the PowerPoint brigade to actually being the chief executor.
And I remember well, executor, not executioner, I hope.
But executor. I don't mean it.
I know. I'm just joking. But I remember sitting there one day, and it was probably like 6 to 8 months into me joining this company. And I was thinking, like, all that stuff that I used to care about because everyone else cared about it doesn't matter anymore. And I can accomplish the same thing in an email with bullet points than if I would spend 18 hours building a beautiful PowerPoint. And it's liberating and it's refreshing and you focus on what matters most. But I think for some of our listeners who operate in different environments, but that's required, they may not have the luxury to scrap all of this. So here's a good example. It's Passover. So I'm in holiday mode where we're entertaining and we're hosting and there's never-ending dinners. So you can host a beautiful formal dinner with china and silver cutlery and beautiful cloth napkins and serving platters and everything like that. And a lot of people really, really enjoy it and appreciate it and find that it gives them a different experience. And then you've got people who are like, who cares about all that? Bring things out in your aluminum disposable pans, have, plastic cutlery, and, just put the takeout containers directly on the table. And at the end of the day, you're going to leave the table with the same sense of, you're going to be like, wow, that was a good meal. I'm not hungry anymore. Like, I'm good. But it's a different experience. And I think different people relate differently to those things. Different people attribute importance to the different scenarios. And most importantly, it's the rules and the culture of the environment that you operate in.
Some people like rules, and then there's people like me that like to trample on them.
Yep.
I don't break them, but I like to stomp on them and then pull back a little bit. I'm a line stepper, not a line crosser.
They're stretchy, but you always consider the implications.
Of course I
Always.
do. I'm not a
Yeah.
complete wild ass. I just believe that you should execute with aggression. Maybe
Yes.
it's my background. I don't know, but I don't think a mission should be forever.
I think the difference with you as compared to many others of us who've just operated in traditional work environments is you have experienced situations where your decisions, your actions, your approach could lead to a life or death situation, whether it was in the military, whether it was in aviation, right? Most of us don't ever experience that, right? So we're
No, I
operating
know.
in, so,
That was
but
the
I think,
biggest thing for me to get over when I joined corporate
oh,
America was I
yeah,
didn't understand why everyone wasn't acting like they were on edge.
yeah. But,
We're-
but, but it gives you a sense of what really matters
oh,
because
for sure.
when life or death is at stake, when the success of a mission or when going to rescue, a downed airman, I mean, that who cares about the pomp and
Yeah, my
circumstance? You need to
lens
focus.
my lens of what's important and where you should spend your time is absolutely different. Not better or
Mm,
worse, just so
hmm
different. And I didn't have a fully formed brain when I joined corporate America. And don't want to be offended by that. I'm talking about me. I don't even think I grew into my brain until I was 45. I mean, for complete transparency, like it took a lot of experiences for me to throttle what's important. Chewing gum and walking was no longer a life and death thing for me. But I didn't know that. The military and aviation, all that stuff is really good at getting you ready for one thing, but it's not good at getting you ready to be done with that thing. Everybody will probably have to listen to that 3 times. They sharpen you, but they don't, I almost said dull. They don't change the blade later. So you walk around as a sharp instrument. And
Yeah.
joining corporate America when everyone was just okay with a meeting, it still makes me nuts. I'm just way more mature and older and maybe calmer because I eventually had a family, and that certainly changes the way you think about things that are important. But yes, so if you're a veteran listening to this, finding ways to adapt to your new environment, not everything is life and death. And if you choose this path, you got to find a way to throttle it. I didn't do it soon enough. It got me in trouble.
Mm,
But anyway,
mm.
finish find a mission oriented culture and finish what you start. That's what makes you great. That's why you don't need to talk all the time in meetings. Like finish and then say, okay, guys, what's next? Be that person. Be endlessly optimistic about what the next thing to learn is, or courageous or curious about the next thing. I think everything is a lesson. I think all of us here at Checkalt have learned things we never would have learned at the other places we worked. Now, my first 9 years were at places like Checkalt. Like when I joined US Bank, I was stunned how many freaking meetings there were. I'm like, what do you mean? I used to make that decision. Now, why do I have to ask 7 people for permission to take a flight to Tempe from Dallas? And it was a hard change. So being back here, the empowerment gets people drunk. And the sad part about places like this is drunk in a good way. You enjoy it. So, and then it becomes your normal. And you won't know it's not
Mm.
normal until you go back to a place like the places we work. Not that there's anything wrong with those places. Everyone, I'm on record. I loved US Bank. I loved it. 14 years of my career, half my career was at US Bank. But it is a tempo difference and control difference. And to Rachel's point earlier, you always can't control the outcome because the machine is driving the mission, not you. But how can you help the machine be more efficient? That's people miss that part. Like if the object is to get to the cloud or to buy a fleet of cars or to save an airman on a hill, and you think you have one small piece of that. Never forget that every teeth in a gear matters. If one tooth is missing
Yes.
on a gear while it's turning, the mechanism doesn't work properly. Everybody has a critically important role to play. So don't get lost in the size of where you work or the scale of the mission. Focus on, be curious about what the overall mission is, but man, be badass about what your part is. Because you can change the outcome. Everyone, it's not me just rah-rahing a bunch of strangers through a podcast. I believe it to be true because I've seen it.
Yeah,
So anyway, all right, we should wrap there.
we will.
We're gonna make sure this list is in there and the video for that I talked about with Jeremy Irons. Everybody watch it. It's freaking
Yeah.
amazing. If you can watch this $3.5 million film with some of the most famous actors and actresses talking about the housing crisis, even though it's a little dark and what happened to the world or how close we came to the economy toppling over, you should watch it. There's lessons in everything we consume. So
Yes,
thank you
there
guys for listening.
is. Take care.